All right, guys, we're here. I can't promise that something crazy with my internet's not going to happen, but I have faith, and I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this conversation for um, a while, and I'm so glad he's here, Mr. EJ Doble. How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, doing well. Top
Did
marks.
I say that right? Doble,
Yes, you did.
Dobble.
Yes, you did. The
Awesome.
number of people call it double. It's normal. It's fine.
Well, good deal, man. So how has your day been? Anything like out of the ordinary or exciting that you want to talk about, or you want to just dip right into the books?
Well, I work in a secondary school by profession in the daytime, so every day is a new learning curve, especially when it comes to working with teenagers. But yeah, just pretty normal day. Settled in the evening and having a lovely conversation with a great booktuber. So I say we're off to a good start for a nice evening.
Absolutely, I love that, man. Thank you. So tell us about. So give us the names of your published work, the series name, and then I know you've got a couple, and then kind of go into like an overview of them.
Okay, so we've got three main ones. We've got the heavy hitter, the my debut series, the Blood and Steel Saga, which currently includes a prequel novella, The Crown of Omens, which was released in October, so last month. The Fangs of War, which is my first ever book published, that in January 2022, and then The Horns of Grief, my trouble child as far as writing is concerned, and that currently makes up the series. I also have a book 2.5, which is coming out August 1st next year. I haven't revealed a lot of information about it so far, but I am about it. And then next year starts the massive project of doing book 3, which looks to be about double the size of the Fangs of War. So it's going to be a pretty hefty book. And then my other series, which I'm currently writing the second installment for, is The Realm of the Prophets. It's a philosophical fantasy novella series. When I was growing up, I read a lot of history, read a lot of philosophy. I was deeply interested in that kind of thing. And I wanted to try and develop that into a fantasy world, to try and tell stories and approach different topics in different ways. And so the first Moon came out October 2022. And then the sequel, which I'm currently writing, is currently slated to release March the 1st next year. And again, there seems to be a running pattern. This book looks to be significantly larger than the first one. I just can't help myself. That will be a trilogy series. There will be another one later on, some point in the future. And then my last series is a mini series almost. It will be a selection of 5 novellas, and they are grimdark fairy tales, retellings of traditional children's tales, which go right back to the roots, right back to the Brothers Grimm talking about them, with a very distinct writing style, a lot of unique elements. They're little fun projects that I write on the side, but they are slowly building up to create a bigger project, which is quite a way in the future still, but something, again, I'm very much looking forward to. So yeah, 3 current series going in the same direction. I like to keep my plate full, and I like to keep all my balls in the air at all times.
I love that. I think the two that just for with the constraints of time, because we could talk about all these for an endless amount of time, and I would love that. But my debut to you was Blood and Steel.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, guys, I'm not super far into it. I've got a lot of things to get to before that, but that's like my pleasure read right now. The Fangs of War. It's like, okay, if there's books that I'm reviewing like on my schedule, and then I'm also going to review that one, of course. But um, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm taking it slow. I'm not necessarily rushing through anything. I'm just like kind of capturing how I feel with it, and it's unlike anything I have ever read. I've never felt this way, and I'll tell you, if you've seen the starred comment that Esme put in the comments before this even started, she's the reason I had heard of you before her review of Esme's review, but her review really, I was like, oh, I've got to get to that. How did it feel? I'm sure you've read her review.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, like just gushes about it.
It was, yeah, it's extensive. And I am, of course, incredibly grateful for any feedback I get. But when there's, you know, such praise, obviously it gives you a good feeling, and you know, it feels like what you've worked towards is, you know, accomplishing something when people have such a close attachment to it and have such a reaction from it when they read it. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it was a lovely review. And yeah, I think it has engaged quite a few different people in trying out my stuff.
She's a big voice in this community, and I think for a wonderful reason. And she talks about books that she likes, and then she screams about books that she loves, and also not afraid to give criticisms too. So
Yes,
that's a great skill set for somebody who reviews lots of books like her.
absolutely.
So congratulations on that review. That's amazing. She's wonderful. And what she said, guys, if you don't see the comment, it says, dang, super excited. Won't be able to watch live once it starts. Just want to say that EJ has skyrocketed to the top of my favorite authors list over the last month. Love it. Enjoy the chat. So nice. Thank you for popping in real quick. Let's get to, we have E.L. Montague, my Discord moderator, buddy, writing buddy, confidant, my man. He's in the chat over here. Hello, wonderful people. He's a working man today too, so he's just gonna listen to the background, I guess. Thank you, man, for tuning in. Bert, he's always here. Thank you so much, Bert. Esme, yeah, 2 days in a row, exactly. So Free Wolf, he says, "Hey y'all, hey, how you doing, Zol? Thank you for popping in." Another wonderful indie author, Tim McKay.
Yes.
Matt Jones, another wonderful indie author. Caden Love, another wonderful indie author. Yes, another great author in his 20s. Young boys represent. I would say young men, but you know, either way. And Hobbit whole books. Damn sad I missed this at work. You haven't missed anything. We're here.
We're
but
here,
if,
and we're rolling with it.
Exactly. But if you find yourself busy at work, this will 100% be available when we're done. So let's further the chat. What was it that inspired? So remind me, The Fangs of War was your debut book, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what gave you that inspiration to start such a what did you call it when you like a ballsy dark series?
I always, when I was younger, growing up, probably between the ages of like 14 and 17, 18, I would start new projects. I'd write the beginnings of books, like the first 200 pages or so. I'd get deep into it, but none of them kind of clicked and flowed enough to actually complete a work. I've always been writing, always loved writing. And one day I combined inspiration from a number of different projects that I started but never finished. And I went back through some of my old English stuff that I did at school.
Oh wow!
And I encountered a like a creative writing task, and it was to describe something on a silent shore. And so, hence the opening line was born. And
yes.
I went back through and I read my teacher's notes. My teacher was not impressed with what I wrote, but I rolled with it anyway. And that prologue then became 100 pages, then became 100,000 words, and you know, kind of rolled from there. I had periods where I kind of gave up on it for about 3 months because I thought this isn't going anywhere. But I didn't start another project. I just kept going with it, kept churning with it. That first book probably took me about 2 years to write, which sits at the longest time it's ever taken me to write a book. But by the end of it, I was just it was an embodiment of all the elements of my writing that I I loved, and different inspirations from various projects, and it was all just born into this book, into this project. And I was just so pleased with it. And yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of where its birth came from. But yeah, where its actual then entrance into the world that we know, the realms of self-publishing, that was a different story in itself. But as far as an origin story is concerned, it is a amalgamation of so many different things.
That's amazing, man. So you loved literature, writing. Did you also love reading at
Yes.
the same time? Okay, so literature, period. Like that's not my story. So I love hearing people who grew up loving that. And I found it later, which I feel like I kind of missed out on finding that love early and being so inspired by it and wanting to write at a younger age, which I think is very key. But I love to hear about it in other people's story because it's a really foundational story. Like you're doing what you thought you were going to do when at that time, when we think what we're going to do at that age is never usually what we're going to do, but that inspiration has followed you, and that's amazing.
Some would call that me never growing up, but
I think that if it was a different topic, maybe some I don't know. I get what you're saying, but no, this is a wonderful wonderful thing to stick around with. So, as far as a subgenre, where would you place this series?
I'd say grimdark, but not right at the end of the scale. Obviously, we talk about, and I put a post on Twitter actually yesterday, and there was a massive long conversation with a number of people to do with what actually defined grimdark, and I think mine is sat slap bang in the middle, because there's night. What's that? Sorry.
Would you give us the definition that you have for grimdark?
Definition I have for grimdark. Atmospheric, deprived, morally contentious, where hope is a light. If grimdark is the night sky, hope is the moon. It's a single point. It's very bright, but it's very small compared to the vastness of everything else.
That's a true author.
Yeah, I know.
I love that answer. I'm so sorry, EJ, if I do this. The lag between me and my interviewee, if you will, I accidentally interrupt sometimes, and I'm so sorry. It's never on purpose. Chris Fisher, though, has such a wonderful comment. EJ is not human, man. His writing is God tier. I genuinely get excited when I know he's working on something, and I will champion him till the last.
Chris is a champion of the community, full stop. I have never met a more supportive human when it comes to this kind of thing.
Wow.
Across the entire social media space. Yeah, he's an incredibly valued member of the community. And if he carries on championing me, I will carry on sending him my art copies of my books. So, it's a win-win.
That's amazing to have that kind of a relationship. And it sounds like not just one. You've got Esme and Chris here in the comments who are absolutely in love with your writing, and that's got to feel so cool, man.
It is, so, yeah. It makes it feel, it makes it feel like it's not just me sat at my screen writing and then publishing and then writing and then publishing. There's actually the additional then engagement of other people, and it's such a heartwarming thing. And
I bet.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So you grew up loving writing. You grew up loving reading. Who did you read, and who would you say has their hands in the way that you write today?
I grew up reading a variety of different authors, and especially fantasy authors, but there were definitely a couple of standouts. What stands as my all-time favorite author, and I think that will stand for the rest of the time, is Adrian Tchaikovsky. My books are not like his. overall in the grand scheme of things. But his writing and his structure and his way of developing characters is just something that stuck with me. And when I first endeavored to enter into like proper adult fantasy, his first 10-book series, Shadows of the Act, was one of the first ones I kind of, dived headfirst into. And I absolutely loved them. And then later on, I started reading Christopher Paolini, Marcus Heights. Then I went on eventually to Joe Abercrombie, John Gwynne, Anna Smith Spark more recently. But I'm not actually too sure who in particular. Again, I think like with what the Fangs of War became, I think my writing style has developed through a number of different sources, and I picked little bits out of each of them. Like Joe Abercrombie's the darkness of his world and his characters and the sarcasm. I love a bit of sarcasm. I also love a story betrayal. The expansiveness of Tchaikovsky, the flawed characters and the tension of John Gwynne and stuff like that. I think there are so many different influences. And I also read a lot of nonfiction. So I think real life history is also kind of blends in with that as well.
I think very much so. And one that comes to my mind, and you spoke his name, was Joe Abercrombie. If you ask him, because I've seen him in so many interviews, if he reads a lot of fantasy, he's like, no, it feels too much like work. I read mostly nonfiction so that I can make sense when I write fantasy. Like there has to be a lot of history. And I think that reading about history, no matter what the country, continent it's about, is very beneficial when it comes to writing a fantasy book. I love your dedications page. It says, dedicated to 7-year-old me and all those who believed this could happen. A promise made is a promise kept. That was influential, inspiring, right off the rip.
Yeah, that was technically when I wrote my first book, and it was called In Space with a Chase. And it was a story about a boy called Sam and his pet velociraptor, and they went off to space to find a space laser and stuff like that. Wacky stories. But to be fair, if I could dedicate that dedication to anyone, it would probably be my father, because right back then it was a case of, oh yeah, you want to write stories, right, go for it. Here's a word processor. Let's make a fun cover, right away. Okay. And then he gave me the published copy, which was literally just it printed on A4 paper. And then when I was 13, I tried to get a book published. And he was the one who, constructed the emails and sent it out to people and sent it out to some editors and agents and stuff to see, if there was any interest in stuff. And it gave it a realness that I think I would have lacked if I hadn't had that additional support. So yeah, I think if a dedication can go anywhere, I think my dad definitely deserves it, because
that's an amazing story. As a father myself, I know how much work and dedication. Now, I don't know if you have siblings, but if you did, that just multiplies it right there. And he's taking the time. I love that. I absolutely agree with you. That's wonderful to hear. And I think at that age, you said, how old were you?
I was 7.
So at that age, how real would that have been? I imagine myself a 7-year-old, how real that would have felt in my hands. Like something I wrote, Dad had, printed. And so that's really cool.
Holding this book with a funny little JPEG rocket on the front,
Now, do you still have that?
I do still have that. Yeah, I don't have it with me, but I do. Yeah, I still have all of them. I got a random selection. I've got memory sticks of the ones I made when I was older and stuff, and I make sure to keep all of it because they are cherished memories for me.
Oh, it's treasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
100% like treasure, because one day, when you won't be able to, maybe if you kind of feel distant from those memories, you can just reimagine them in the moment. So Blood and Steel, would you give us some themes that you touch on?
The extent that someone is willing to go to hold on to what they desire. I think lust for power is a lot of it. Greed is a lot of it. People making morally conscious choices and not always feeling the good consequences of it. Definitely bitter friendships. And I know a number of people who are watching this who have read The Fangs of War in entirety will know what I mean by bitter friendships. Definitely a bit of revenge. I'm an absolute sucker for revenge story. And yeah, just a lot of different themes. And about the fact that the weather can dictate any scene comfortably.
I think that, I mean, here, that's why I do this, guys. I usually wait to talk with the author until I really dive into the book, and hearing just a couple things I've already heard, you'll notice right off from the rip, the weather, a beach. Yeah. So I'm already hearing things that I knew, but now I can really feel it now that I'm talking to you,
Yeah.
and your inspiration behind that kind of stuff. So when you're reading for pleasure, what are some tropes that you like to see in a book that when you notice they're there, all of a sudden you just get this really excited feeling?
I would say mental health done well is definitely one that if I see it in a book, I think, oh, and I kind of twig that, you know, this might be a really good start to something. Characters who writers who aren't afraid to shy away from individual, like, little conversations between people. It's one of the things I do love about Abercrombie's work, is that you get to know every single character by their little conversations, not by the dramatics.
The dialogue. Yes.
Yeah. And I've read a number of different books this year that have absolutely blown me away. Nuanced character emotions and stuff like that. And I'll put a mention out to James L. Dullin and Benjamin Averin, because both of their works are absolutely stellar when it comes to. I know you interviewed Ben a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's such a nice guy.
I am a biggest fan. You know, I think his work's fantastic. But yeah, just bits and pieces like that. A revenge story. I'm sure I've already mentioned it somewhere in this interview. A revenge story. Yeah, Best of Cold is one of my top 3 favorite books. Yep, it is a fab. Sequel is even better. Genuinely awesome books. Yeah, bits and pieces like that. Usually it's a book that I go into every book expecting it to be a half-decent fantasy story. And when it kind of steps up a level and then up a level, and, you know, there are nuances in there that I didn't there. And, you know, that really, really engages me and really throws me into the story. And I love that.
I absolutely loved No Heart for a Thief myself. I haven't read book 2 yet. I'm really looking forward to it. And James is such a nice guy. I've had him on before.
He is.
And I just got the ebook, Salt in the Wound, today.
Yes.
So I can't wait to dive into that. And even more so now that I know you love it. What was your biggest challenge publishing a book that you found for you?
Where do I begin? Biggest challenge for me overall was probably me finding my voice, not actually as a writer, but as a person on social media. Because, you know, a lot of us self-published lot, we don't have the media team. We are the media team.
Right.
And that means that I then have to go onto, you know, Instagram and Twitter and other bits and pieces like that. I have to create content. I have to maintain a, you know, my persona on there, and I have to make sure people stay engaged. And a lot of that was really stressful initially because I had no idea what I was doing. And so, you know, it's finding the right balance between, you know, supporting other content, supporting your own content, and a lot of media management. So actually, the book process was really smooth, especially for the Fangs of War. Not so much for later installments, but as a story of itself. But yeah, the initial actual publishing process of the first book was really fine. It was getting it to people's faces that was definitely the biggest challenge.
I think what I'm hearing, and I hear this quite a bit, it's the fact or the reasons independent publishing is available and you can do that are the reasons. Let me rephrase. What makes indie publishing possible are also the same reasons that make it really hard.
Yes, absolutely.
Marketing.
Absolutely.
You know, the social media, if there wasn't a social media, if that didn't happen, you being an indie author probably wouldn't be.
I'd be on a stall in my local high street, you know, waving my books for a penny and stuff like
that. But I think, excuse me, guys, those commonalities between you and so many other indie authors make this journey that you're all taking.
Yes.
Even more relatable. It's like, okay, we know these answers individually as I get them from authors, but they repeat themselves. So in my head, it's easier to map out the process based on the commonalities I hear.
Yes.
So what book, and it could be anything that you've ever written, if you want to answer it that way, what's been the most fun for you to write as far as a book, and then maybe a character?
Books that was most fun to write, and then probably they're different. Probably Gold Lock and Key, my grim dark fairy tale novella that I wrote, released back in June of this year. Because I went into that with absolutely no expectations as to what I needed to write and how I needed to write it. It was a case of, here's Goldilocks' story, let's completely mess it up and see what happens. And while that worked for some people, it didn't work for others. But as far as a writer is concerned, the process of just, you know, spilling that out and writing, you know, however many pages and stuff, and then just, you know, saying, yeah, that's done, off it goes. It was like a 100-meter dash. It was just, you know, just adrenaline. You go forward, and it was just really fun to write.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, and then you said best character.
Yeah, so like the character you enjoyed writing the most.
I think it comes through in the writing. Ravek is definitely my top pick for that. He is despicable. He is heroic. He is completely lost in his own little world. And I absolutely love writing anything to do with him. So yeah, it's one of my favorite things to write comfortably.
Maybe a little unpredictable as you're writing him, or unpredictable to like the readers also.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite things writing him in The Fangs of War and the Horns of Grief. Is I didn't know where his story was going. I didn't know where his story would end. And there's a certain scene in a certain place where Ravek is kind of staring death in the face in the second book, which people who've read it will know, but I won't spoil it.
Thank you.
Where something happens, and then a revelation happens with him. And I had initially at the start of that chapter, I had no idea that was going to happen. I just wrote it in because it felt right and it felt dramatic, and you know, it's Ravek. It's got to be done this way. So yeah, it's characters that just don't follow any kind of norms when it comes to planning, writing, and characters and stuff. Yeah, Ravek is by far my favorite.
I love that. I can't wait to get some context, if you will. Yes, another person that's always here. Thank you, John A. Douglas. As always, go check out his new book. He just published it, A Black Crown. And I don't know if I've mentioned it, guys. I've got a little bit of like a scratchy throat kind of thing. So if I sound weird or I'm a little slower today, I apologize. Let's see. Bert, I have heard so many great things about this series. I can't wait to dive in next month. So how long do you plan on the Blood and Steel to be?
The Blood and Steel saga is 8 books long with a spin-off. So it is,
Yes.
it's hefty.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's a prequel, 5 main books, 2.5 books that you should probably read to make full sense of the story, but they are 0.5, so some people won't. And then there's also a spin-off at the end, which is set 20 years afterwards. But yeah, it's an expansive series, and I'm probably going to be writing it for the next 5 or 6 years comfortably.
Wow.
And I'm
I think
more than happy to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun, and I mean the feedback that you're getting that I've seen has to only just be another thing championing you to and being even more fun to write.
Yes.
Santos Ganesh, thank you for popping in. He says, late but here now. EJ Doble is one of my favorite authors after just one book. I've not read any grimdark book that grimdarks like this. He made me sob over a rabbit. Truly unparalleled.
Yeah.
I don't want to, as much as I want to hear more about this rabbit, I don't at the same time. You know what I mean?
You will, if you're at the start of the Fangs Wall, you'll find out very soon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think I've only made it through. Is it your prologue or chapter 1? It's prologue.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I started it, and just because I couldn't help myself after seeing Esme's review, and that's really all it took. I'm very excited to continue. Christopher Navo, another wonderful booktuber, as well as an author himself. I can't wait to hear more about when his book is coming out. Thank you for popping in, brother. And he also says, I have Fangs of War ready to read here soon. Wonderful.
Awesome.
And Isaac Anderson, another wonderful indie author, is here. He says, no, not the rabbit.
Yeah, it can get pretty brutal.
What was your very first fantasy novel as a kid?
Oh my goodness. My very first fantasy novel.
Oh, no, you can't, Mama.
It might actually be The Hobbit.
I love that.
It might actually be The Hobbit, because I was part of a at the end of my primary school, junior school, I was part of an English club, basically, of people who had aspirations to do a lot of creative writing when they were older. The book that we picked Beowulf, and we picked The Hobbit, and then we actually did a field trip to Oxford to go and see where Tolkien lectured and stuff, and that was a fascinating trip. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh!
I know, it was awesome. I sat under his tree, and I was the biggest fanboy. But yeah, no, it was absolutely fabulous. Yeah, I think that would definitely be my first one. I didn't necessarily understand it to the full range that I probably would now if I read it. But yeah, that was my stepping stone in. And then I decided at the age of 11 that I would read the entire Lord of the Rings. I don't think I fully comprehended about a quarter of that, because I was obviously really young, but you know, I read this book about this little hobbit who goes running off and doing fun things. So I want to read about more hobbits that go run off and do fun things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So if I'm imagining myself at 11, even, and reading The Hobbit, which I've listened to The Hobbit, the audiobook, but I want to read it for the first time with my sons. My oldest son right now is 4, and I keep trying to grab the book and start, knowing he's way too young.
You might start a bit low.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I'm still reading to him. I'm trying to. His attention span is not very long. But when I can, that will be the first book that I read to him. In fact, that's him hopping in here to say hello. Wait, buddy.
Hi.
There he
Hi.
is. That's Jackson. So there's a bunch of wires, buddy. So hold on. There's a bunch of wires. I would love for you to stand there for a second, though. He likes to. He likes to be on the YouTube. He says.
Oh, excellent.
So yes. But anyway, yeah, I can't wait to read him, The Hobbit, and hopefully he gets like this inspiration and love.
That'd be awesome. That'd be, yeah.
That I do, but at a way younger age.
Yes.
So, what are you working on at the moment?
So at the moment, I am working on the sequel to The Crescent Moon, which is the first book focused on what is the meaning of life, which I know is quite a deep topic, but trying to tell it through a fantasy story kind of took off a lot of that philosophical weight, which I was grateful for, because otherwise it'd be a very dense book. And this one is more focusing on what you should look for in life. And yeah, it focuses in more on what you call home, what you call community, what you call people around you. And it's been challenging to write, because I've got off the back of writing 2 books. I wrote book 2.5 of the Blood and Steel saga in 2.5 months. I wrote The Crown of Omens in 36 days. And now I'm writing this book, and it's currently the same length as The Crown of Omens, and it's taken me 2.5 months. So, it's a lot slower process, but it's also it's a book that requires construction. It's not a book that I can kind of run away with.
So how has that impacted you as like the writing process? Is it like, do things kind of get burned out? Sorry for if you guys hear a couple babies crying, dad over here. So,
I'd say there was a little bit of burnout. A lot of it is also frustration, because I know the story I want to write as an overall, but I leave a lot of the nuance and the more finer details when it comes to chapter by chapter. I leave that a lot to how I'm feeling when I write it, because that way I get the most out of it. But sometimes that means when I'm trying to construct a certain approach to a chapter, or like trying to develop a certain theme, I have to think of an appropriate way to start it. And so I am, I must drive my fiance mad, but I pace up and down through like rooms and stuff. I'm thinking, how do I start this chapter? How do I start this chapter? What do I need? What characters are talking? Who's talking? Why are they talking about? And it drives me mad. But as the euphoric moment when I finally pick the right entrance point to a chapter, and then I can just write away, and it makes everything so much easier. But it's definitely more of a construction process. It's more methodical.
Sure. So I think there's a new thing with my live interviews where Matt from Matt's Fantasy Books does his research about somebody, and then he blows us away real quick. So the first comment is, EJ, do you have any impressionist landscape paintings you can show up? I'm guessing you paint.
I do paint. I might have to ask my fiance to quickly go and grab one.
Well, he's got a follow-up question that you could answer why that's going on.
Go on
then. Also, what is the most underrated fantasy series in your opinion, and why is it Shadows of the Apt?
It is. Oh my goodness, she's bought all of them. Thank you very much.
This
the reason why it's so it is Shadows of the Apt, absolutely. And the reason why I think is because it's a 10-book series, which, unless it's Wheel of Time, people haven't really heard about. It's the first series that I'm pretty sure it's the first series that Tchaikovsky ever wrote, and it's not one that's as broadly represented. I know that the Broken Binding are doing special editions for it and stuff at the moment, which is really good to see. But it's just, it's characters who are half insect, and they have characteristics and traits and certain additional abilities that would be appropriate for their sex. And it's on this vast world, and there's mechanized elements, there's mythical, magical elements and stuff like that, and there's warmongering peoples and empires, and I think it's a phenomenal series. You know, I wouldn't go at it for, you know, emotional nuance and stuff like that. But if you want a good, strong, incredibly entertaining, incredibly well-developed fantasy series, it has to be that series. As a matter of fact, I am rereading it next year because I miss it so much. And from January to October, I'm going to read every book a month. And I'm so looking forward to it.
Now that's quite a few books, right?
That's a lot of books.
How many books is in Shadow of the Eye?
It's 10, and 10. Then there are 4 short story collections as well that are set in the same world. I've read those ones this year quite recently, so I'm quite up to date with them. But that then kind of rekindled my love for the original series, and I first read the original series when I was about 13. So yeah, it was a long time ago. So I'm going to revisit them and see if I get that same, you know, that same joy when I engage with it. And as far as, I don't know how he's worked out about the landscape paintings, but I'm not.
I know
he's
been doing this lately.
Yeah, there's one. There you go. I got the.
Oh my gosh!
There's my church.
Holy crap, dude!
Yeah,
and that's incredible.
I also do some animal partners, late dog, and stuff like that.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I do a bit of painting. I painted for my dad's 50th birthday. I painted the Glastonbury Pyramid Stage music festival, and you know, bits and pieces like that. I don't do a lot of painting nowadays because I just have so many different things going on that I just don't find the time. But it's definitely something that if I sit down and complete a project, I do get a lot out of it. And I like doing impressionist stuff, as Matt's obviously researched very well. But yeah, no, I love it. I get a lot out of it.
That's incredible. You've got so I think the list that would be shorter is what aren't you good at? Come on, man, leave some talent for the rest of us.
Any sport.
Oh, okay. Well,
hand-eye coordination is just not there. I can swim. Hand-eye coordination for any other sport is just moot.
I was gonna say like I heard that you swam, right?
Yes.
Why have I heard somebody say that it's swum?
Oh,
for past tense.
I think both. I don't know if one's a colloquialism and one is kind of grammatically correct. I'm sure there's some, you know, difference there that I don't.
I've been looking for the exact answer and I can't find it. So maybe if you get a wild hair and you search that out and find that out, send me a message so my brain will stop frying.
I'll do a Matt and do some research and come with you for the perfect answer.
I was gonna say I think it's really cool. Tune in because Matt's gonna find something and dig so hard because I dig, but he's obviously digging really far into things, which is really cool. Yeah, so you can bet your bottom dollar if you tune into Beard of Darkness book reviews live interviews, Matt's gonna drop a bomb in there somewhere. So that's really cool, man. So what's next for you? And maybe kind of like chronicle, like immediately next, or wherever you want to go with it.
What's next for me? Next for me is more writing, more projects, developing as much as I can as a writer. Trying to make sure I keep content going for all 3 series. I don't let anything stagnate at all. Next year, I want a lot of focus to be on the Blood and Steel saga, because that is where a lot of my interest seems to be focusing. So definitely a lot more engagement and content creation for that kind of thing. But yeah, just trying to, you know, keep writing, keep doing what I love and see where it goes. I try not to plan ahead too much as far as, you know, where my books go and what that might lead to and stuff like that. If it happens, it happens, and I'm incredibly grateful. But my expectations are always, so long as I can write the books, I'm happy. As long as people read them and enjoy them, I'm happy.
I love that.
What that looks like in the future, I leave up to fate.
Real quick, a couple people. Alex Valdeers, an indie author, popped in. Good evening, man. And of course, Mark Timoney, another indie author, popped
excellent.
in. He's in Australia. Thanks for popping in, Mark. So, kind of going off what you just said about Blood and Steel Saga, you're going to be focusing a little more on that series. What about audiobooks? If people don't know whether you have them or not, do you have them currently? Or if not, do you plan on eventually having them?
I don't currently, and that is purely a time thing and a financial thing, if I'm completely honest. Because getting someone to professionally record an audiobook can
be expensive.
And I don't have that kind of profiting income from what I do, so it's not currently a priority for me. Ideally, I'd have an audiobook, a hardback for every single book I write. And I will throw it out there, the Blood and Steel Saga will get hardbacks, but they'll get hardbacks when the entire series is finished and I get another little boost in sales and that happens, and then I can focus on that, and everyone can have shiny hardbacks on their shelves.
So you're human.
Because I want mine. But yeah, it's just about prioritization. As Mark said, audio is very expensive, and I don't have the funds to do so.
That's the most relatable thing I've ever heard. I mean, we're all human, and we have times where that's a very real thing, man. So I totally get that, and I think that by the time you start, knowing that you're going to focus a lot on that series, at that time in your life where you start doing that, things could be totally different, and then you'll pick up from there. I love that, man. And then Alex says, Mark says, if you are self-funding and write epic fantasy chunkers, oh yeah, so it kind of
audio is
then audio is very expensive. Alex says, honestly, besides the cost, finding the right narrator is super hard because a narrator whose voice is not suited for your story will destroy your book. Ooh, so many variables.
Definitely.
And then we've talked about her quite a few times already, but she was able to pop in. Made it after all, though. Just started Crescent Moon, and I am dying to read on. Haha.
It's a very different story. It is in a completely different ballpark to Fangs of War and that. But I like writing in different genres and kind of throwing my hat in the ring with different genres and stuff. I have plans to write horror books, sci-fi books, a couple of other genres. I have plenty of ideas for all sorts of genres, and I don't like to confine myself to any particular niche or comfort point. I like to try and expand.
I love that. So kind of just like on the wing, like knowing how much she loves Blood and Steel, how does that feel as an author that the same person who loves Blood and Steel, this one series, is starting a different kind of a story? Is that somewhat intimidating?
It can be quite nerve-wracking, and it has been nerve-wracking in the past, because I've known some people start with the Crescent Moon and then go to the Fangs of War and stuff, and any switch between the two, I always find, intimidate might be the correct word. It's very different again, and then obviously Grimdark Fairy Tales, that's its own little thing in itself, and you might
brilliant.
If they like all of the range, happy days. But I write range to allow people to not be the biggest fan of one and then really enjoy another. Because at the end of the day, I want to write for people. So
no, that makes perfect sense. Montague says finding your artists, whether cover, illustration, or audio, is as important to the experience as the story.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good comment. And Yeah, I think Alex kind of touches on this again. It is, and often you need to take a chance on someone, knowing it might not work out. Well, that's a good take, because, yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. Is somebody loves this, you also want to know a totally different. It kind of would speak on your writing, I think.
Yeah, people will either like all genres that I write, any project that I put out, because they like the way I write, or they'll like a particular one because they like the genre and not another one because they don't like that genre, and that's absolutely fine, and I don't mind that. And I think a lot of the impetus around me writing the Fangs of War, not the Fangs of War, the Crown of Omens, was to allow people to have that entry point. Because if you read the Crown of Omens and you're thinking, wow, this is awesome, I love it, then you're going to love the rest of the series. And you don't have to cash out too much to get the Fangs of War. Because the last thing I want to do is for someone to buy a self-published book, which sadly has to be more expensive than a traditionally published book.
Yeah.
And then get 20 pages in and go, I don't like this. I rather they spent 99p on an ebook for The Crown of Omens, read 40 pages, said, maybe not for me, and then left it there. And equally, it can be a starting point for someone to really enjoy the rest of the series if they do enjoy it. So I think that's important.
I think you gave a lot of really good and informational points right there, because I have a lot of people like myself who want to write and want to hear from people who are experienced with the whole process. Really, the foundation of why I started this channel. So I'm really glad that you've had so many good points and information on your personal experience. So I always like to ask. This has been my favorite question so far. My favorite additional question that I've added to some of the ones that I already had, and that is, on your personal preference, who are a couple or a few, however many you want to name, people you'd like to see me interview in the future?
That is a really good question. Obviously Tchaikovsky. If you can get him on your interviews, that would be awesome, because I've heard he's an absolutely lovely person as well, which obviously adds to the awesomeness of him as a writer.
It does.
John Gwynne, I would say. And then I'm going to throw a self-published one out of there. Christopher Brenning, the Hellborn Saga.
He's on the first, so that's a perfect answer.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes. What a great answer, man. And yes, dude, those first two are
I've read the novella, and that's how you do a novella. You write it gritty, you write it fast, do a couple of time jumps in there as well. But yeah, I loved it. And
are you speaking of Chris's novella?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I know that John Douglas over here in the chat, author of The Black Crown, that's his favorite grimdark author. And I've had this scheduled with him for quite a while, so I'm excited to talk with him. So yeah, awesome. Great answers. John Gwynne is one of like the top 4 or 5 reasons I started this channel too. I absolutely loved The Shadow of the Gods and Hunger of Gods. Absolutely love it. So 1 second real quick. I know I had a special one on here, or maybe I already asked it. It's been one of those days, guys. I'm so sorry. I've been a little bit under the weather. So do you have an all-time favorite author? I think I forgot to ask you that one. Maybe Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be Tchaikovsky, I think. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I love that though. You've given so many good pointers. I've really looked forward to having you on here, because I've never had the beginning of a book make me feel the way that yours did, man. I'm so much looking like so far forward to reading it. Very excited, and I'm very excited for you, because I know that you've got a long career ahead of you. So I just wanted to thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit, dealing with me being a little bit under the weather and the internet being a little laggy. So I appreciate you.
It's a stoic effort. and I do definitely appreciate it.
And all you guys that showed up to watch live and again deal with me being a little under the weather, and you guys that will watch in the future, I really just want to thank you. So until next time, guys, y'all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, and we'll see you next time.
See you.